to the community, and you, Mr. Chairman, in particular, thank you so much for chairing this hearing in the district. We endeavored to find a location and a time that was convenient for the people who live here. These are hard-working, knowledgeable, educated residents that we heard from today. And it's a great representation of the entire district. My message to DND, to the BRA, and the city as a whole is that this community is never going to allow itself to be disrespected. Now, I opened up, Mr. Chairman, by saying I actually like the idea of urban farms, and I do. I think it's a very attractive idea. It may actually be in vogue around the country. I know the mayor has been bragging about it locally and nationally, and that's great. But this proposal is not to put a farm on Chesterfield Street in Hyde Park where the mayor lives. This proposal is not to build urban farms on Commonwealth Avenue, Commonwealth Mall, as I mentioned earlier. The proposal is not to build these farms at the Rose Kennedy Greenway. There's plenty of acreage out there. I walk around the Greenway all the time. The proposal is very specific in terms of locations. And I, for one, resent the suggestion that the community residents were somehow negligent in this process. The residents were anything but negligent. They love this community. They love the families just like every other community in the city of Boston. And the purpose of this hearing was to give community residents an official forum to indicate how they felt about the proposals, particularly those who are brothers. And with all due respect to the hard-working people in the BRA and DND, I think there was a level of arrogance displayed by this process. I said that at the BRA, and the BRA totally ignored the community concerns when they voted to approve this project, which in reality they had already approved by assigning their staff to do it. So they were approving a process that they had in fact invented. But that's not a legitimate process. These are taxpayers, hard-working people who deserve to have a major say on what happens in their community. This is not a colonial regime. This is not a plantation. But these are residents who deserve respect. With that said, I want to actually thank the BRA and DND for focusing attention on this community. And hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully you have learned something. Because if you don't learn from this experience, you're bound to repeat the same mistakes. And I dare you to make this proposal at Beacon Hill or in South Boston or somewhere else. You're going to get the same response unless you involve the community. The community should be the primary focus, not some exotic idea that we can talk about around the country. And I like the idea of urban farms. But if someone said, I love urban farms, I just don't want them in my backyard. And I know that's NIMBY, but I also realize that there are people in this community that's been involved, actively involved in the community planning process, and they were not consulted. Colin Diaz participated in a number of charrettes, looking at alternate uses for those parcels along the Fairmont line. Was he consulted? No, he was not. Just as when the administration began building that taxi cab inspection station that I mentioned at the opening of this hearing, the city just went ahead and built it. Not consulting community residents, not consulting elected officials, but it's okay. But because this community stood up and told the administration what it wanted and what it didn't want. Instead of a taxi cab inspection stand on Talbot Ave, we have the Mount Washington Bank, which I think is a superior choice and one that this community supported. So my job is done. I provided, with the help of the chair, a forum for the community to speak out, and you did, and I'm very proud of that fact. You gave up a lot to be here this evening, but it really doesn't stop here. The city has heard from you. The next step, in terms of this process, if there is to be urban farms, and that's questionable, on these sites, it has to go to, and I really appreciate the fact that we have the head of the D&D here. She is truly committed to our community. She sat through the entire hearing. Let's give Evan Friedman a round of applause. She didn't have to do it. But these parcels are owned and controlled by D&D. Nothing is going to happen unless it's approved by D&D. But it also has to go to the zoning commission. Because guess what? We went through a zoning process to define land use policy for this community. And what's before us is a proposal to amend that policy. After many years I went into defining these parcels for residential purposes, now someone came up with the idea of the entire city of Boston that these 4 parcels, and only these 4 parcels, will receive the designation of the overlay district for agricultural purposes. We should feel honored, I suppose. But this community's voice has to be heard. And that's my only job here, is to make sure your voice is heard. I may agree or disagree with what was said, but your voice was here tonight because the chairman of this committee decided to cooperate with you and have a hearing in the community after 6 o'clock to accommodate the working people in this community. I thank all those who testified. I thank the people from the BRA, from D&D, and other city officials who worked so hard. They're well-meaning. They're well-meaning. But this community has to make those decisions, not now. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.